Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're continuing in the Ayin. B'siyata d'shmai, we're up to Parshat Lecha. This piece in Parshat Lecha is one of the unique pieces. I don't think we learned a piece like this throughout our cycle. Now, we started learning this from the time of the Ayin's yard site, which is coming up in about 2 months from now. We really didn't start from Bereshis last time, so we never came across such a beautiful and unique type of piece. Most chidushim of the Ayin, most of his Torah up until now that we learned is talking about being an Anov, serving Hashem, how to approach Avdus Hashem, Musar. This piece is a very unique piece where the Ayin teaches us what the relationship between Avraham Avinu and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was, and then as an extension, what is our relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and our relationship to Shabbos. So the piece begins, Vayom Hashem al Avraham, Lech mi'atzecha el ha'aretz asher areka. Omer Rabbi Zal. There's a famous Gemara in Brachos Tav Zayin Amud Beis. Lo hoye misha kari l'HaKadosh Baruch Hu Adon. The uniqueness of Avraham Avinu was that up until his point, nobody called HaKadosh Baruch Hu with the name Adon. Ad sheba Avraham ukara Adon, and Avraham was the first person that called HaKadosh Baruch Hu Adon. But Ayin, what does this mean? Avraham hischil likro es HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'shem Aleph Daled Nun Yud b'chinas Malchus, which means shekibel Avraham Allah b'chinas Malchus Yizbarach. Avraham Avinu was the first one that accepted HaKadosh Baruch Hu as the king. Hard to understand. It will be much easier as we continue this beautiful piece in the Ayin. Aval lefnei Avraham lo hoye mishakara Adon shenisiyachid Malchus Yizbarach alav. There were people that understood that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was a god, was a ruler, but the level of Malchus, Adonus, nobody was in that relationship until Avraham Avinu. Vahatam, what's the reason? Why not? Why Takan nobody called HaKadosh Baruch Hu Melech? The Ayin teaches us an unbelievable chiddush and insight. Ki ini Melech, ein yochel liyos ki im al mishu b'chinas dimin Melech. In order to be a Melech, or to call somebody a king, you have to be similar to that individual. Ki hayitochen, should it be? And he gives a beautiful example. Can an animal call a person a king? Can a person be a king over the animals? You can't be a king over the animals. You have no relationship to them. Can a person be a king over a different culture? No, there's no relationship. There's no comparison. You can't be a king over the animals. You can be stronger than them. You can control them. But the word king does not fit. A melech is the leader of a country that has similar attributes. Rak mishu melech al bnei adam kamoyu ze nikra melech. And the Memela, as we're going to see, up until that point, there was nobody kaviyachol that had a certain similarity to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Lechein, therefore, there was no way for anybody to be considered a subject of Hashem. Hashem did not allow anybody to call him Melech. Why? Because they were not on the same, they did not have similar attributes, which we're going to learn what they are in a second. Now, obviously, nobody is like Hashem. Chas v'shalom to even think that. But as we know, there are Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim. Right, this is a Sefer Toimei Devara. Mahu Rachum, Af'ata Rachum. Right, we know this concept that just like as Hashem has certain characteristics, our avodah as a Jew is to do the same characteristics of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu was delaying and getting angry, we should be delaying and getting angry. Just like Hashem is Rachum, that's the whole Sefer Toimei Devara that teaches us how to walk in the ways of Hashem. Until Avraham Avinu, nobody had the same attributes as HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'lechein einu shayach gam ken she's yachal HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chinas melech habaz odam she'ein erech lo klal v'shum dimin klal. Up until Avraham Avinu, there was nobody like Hashem. There's nobody, rather I should say more precisely, that had a similar attribute as Hashem. Rak HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'rav rachamav b'rav chasadav ratz liyachid malchus yizbarach al Yisrael am Chadosh Taika. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to be the Melech to Klal Yisrael. Like it says, Koyamar Hashem Melech Yisrael. We say this on Rosh Hashanah. So did Hashem say, the king of Klal Yisrael. Hashem wanted to be the king of Klal Yisrael. And Memela, in order for Hashem to be the king of Klal Yisrael, right, HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to bring somebody into this world that shared similar attributes. Avraham Avinu was the first one that was Malech Chesed. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Malech Chesed. Yisrael Daika Shenikra Adam. Lashon Adam Elyon. The word Adam, we know that Klal Yisrael is called Adam. Now that doesn't mean that non-Jews are not Adam. They're called Ish, men, or Isha. Klal Yisrael has a special title that's called Adam Elyon. Why? Because as the pasuk says, we are like the Elyon. Ultimately, a Jewish person wants to be davik to Hashem. Even a Jew that's very gashmis has a neshama. That neshama wants to be davik to Hashem. It's blocked sometimes by gashmis, by the Yetzer Hara, by taivas, but ultimately, every yid wants to be davik to Hashem. Udveikin b'midasav yizbarach, and to be davik in the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? Just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu's rachum, we know b'derech klal, most Jewish people are rachmaniyas. Obviously, none of us are like Hashem, even a trillionth of a quarter of a trillionth of a percent. But we can follow His ways, right? We can do chesed like Hashem. We can have rachmanas on people like Hashem. We can delay our anger like Hashem. Like I said, the whole Sefer Torah Devorah, which Chazal brings as an unbelievable sefer, teaches us how to emulate the ways of Hashem. Through that idea that now we work to emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we allow Kaviyachol Hashem to be the king. So we see from here, I'm just adding a little knech, the more we follow the ways of Hashem, in actuality, the more melech He is over us. The Nasan Lanu is the Shabbos. And in order to achieve this, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the Shabbos. We know that an idol worshipper that keeps Shabbos is Chayav Misa. Because an idol worshipper has no similarity to Kedusha. Adarabah. Someone who worships idols cannot make Hashem his melech. On the contrary, by doing things that the king does, you're spitting in the king's face. Right? If you follow an idol and you say, oh, I want to do what Hashem wants, so he's like, you're making chayzik of Hashem. How could you follow in Hashem's way? You're following an idol. When a Yid keeps Shabbos, in some way he's connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki Shabbos hu bechinas is damos. Shabbos is a concept of relating to Hashem. Why? Because just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu stopped working on Yom HaShvi, we also stopped working on Yom HaShvi. That action of stopping to work on Yom HaShvi causes us, in a way, to be similar to Hashem. And when we, in a way, follow and emulate Hashem, we intensify the malchus that He has over us, which means we allow HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be our king, right? The more a person says to the king, I am going to do what you do, I'm going to follow your rules, I submit myself to you, I want to do like you, so the more malchus he has over you, the more glorified he is. And lahavdil, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the same way. On Yom HaShvi, we're not supposed to think about Gashmis, it's only Kedusha. Just like all of our work is done. On Shabbos, there's no work. You're not allowed to talk about work. You're not even supposed to think about work. Why? The HaKadosh Baruch Hu stopped work. The more we separate from Gashmis, the more we are connected and we are similar and we emulate Hashem, which allows the idea that Hashem is our Melech. If we do not act in the way of the king, then the king can't be our king. Memela, the opposite, when we do and we emulate the Melech Malchi Amlachim, so then he could become our king. Now, separate ha'ara, why do we eat and sleep on Shabbos? That's not for now. This ois is between me and you, right? We and us have a similar bond. So the Bas Ayin says a beautiful thing, Beini ubein b'nei Yisrael, between me and Klal Yisrael, says Hashem, there's a sign that puts us together. What is that? That's Shabbos. After Klal Yisrael is in a level of Kedusha and a removal of Gashmis, Bas Ayin says there's a two-step process. The first thing is, not only do we have to accept Shabbos, we have to, as much as possible, remove the Gashmis from ourselves, which is not thinking about work, not thinking about things divrei chol, thinking about Torah, thinking about Zmiris and Shabbos, thinking about honoring Shabbos. When we do that, we now connect to Shabbos. When we connect to Shabbos, we emulate Hashem, who finished all the work on the Yom HaShvi, and now we elevate, we can allow Hashem Kaviyachol to be the Melech. Now again, Hashem doesn't need us to be the Melech. Hashem doesn't need us to be anything. But through our actions, we create the ability for us to understand that Hashem is the Melech. An Ovid Kechavim, an idol worshipper who doesn't serve Hashem, when he serves Shabbos, like I said before, it's like he's making fun of Hashem. That's why he's Chayiv Misa. For Hashem is the kingship and is a ruler on all the other nations. On the other nations, Hashem is Kaviyachol, only a ruler. Right? In their eyes, there's the concept of a rulership. The word melech can only be on someone that's similar to you, like we explained before. And therefore, the more we work to emulate Hashem, the more melech Hashem is over us, which is for our benefit. Right? That's why in Shabbos says, Yismechu b'malchuscha shomer Shabbos. Those that keep Shabbos delight in your kingship. What does that mean? How by us keeping Shabbos are we delighting in the kingship of Hashem? So now that we understand that by us keeping Shabbos, we are emulating the ways of Hashem, Memela, we can be joyful in the malchus of Hashem. Adarabba. The more we emulate Hashem, the more we're showing that we're happy that He's the Melech. We want Him, Kaviyachol, to be Hashem the Melech. He dafka de bechinas Shabbos yuchlu loimev lesmech bechinas malchus lios nikr az melech Yisrael. V'lechein dafka al yedei bechinas hachone bechinas dimyon yichon l'kal bechinas Shabbos. And Memela, in order for us to truly receive Shabbos, we have to understand what we're doing. We have to understand that Shabbos is the day of Kedusha. Shabbos is the day of no Gashmias, no materialism, no work. Everything's finished. The more hachana and preparation we do to accept Shabbos, to understand Shabbos, to learn Hilchos Shabbos, the more we emulate Hashem, who did not work on Shabbos. And as a result, the more we accept and we open the concept of Malchus on Klal Yisrael. The more Kaviyachol we allow Hashem to be our king. And it's up to us. And that's very important. So as we learned over here, so far we understand how by keeping Shabbos, right, we emulate Hashem, and therefore we can connect in Hashem, and we allow Hashem to be our king. Hainu, she'acha she'Yisrael heim v'chinas kedusha v'spashtus hagashmias, lochein, we could do that. So very good. And therefore, koidem Avraham Avinu, lahim nikra she'adam. There was nobody that called HaKadosh Baruch Hu master, because there was nobody that was similar to Hashem until Avraham Avinu came. At Shabra Avram u'mosar nafshel Hashem. Avraham Avinu gave over, he was moiser his nefesh for Hashem. That is the removal of Gashmis. He was willing to give up his body for Hashem. He didn't care about this world. Because someone is willing to moiser nefesh himself to Hashem has no connection to this world. Because he could say, what about this? What about that? I won't be able to eat steak. I won't be able to see his family. I won't be able to do this. I won't be able to enjoy this pleasure, that pleasure. A person who's moister nefesh himself has no gashmias. Is only connected to Hashem. And we know that there was nobody that attached himself to the ways of Hashem in midas chesed like Avraham Avinu. And therefore, the Ratza now, what does this have to do with Lech Lecha? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted Avraham Avinu to accept Malchus b'Shleimus. And that could only be done in Eretz Yisrael, in Yerushalayim, which it itself is the Makam Kedusha. Pirish, Yisrael b'chinas his pashtus agashmus. Kamayim HaKos, like it says, Shema Yisrael Hashem L'ken Hashem Echad, Pirish b'pasiku kabos o malchus Shemayim b'mesius nefesh. Every day, when we say twice a day Shema Yisrael, we accept on ourselves HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? B'chol mamoncha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol gufcha, b'chol moedecha, with all your money. We're willing to give everything away to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when we do that, we accept Ol Malchus Shemayim. And when we accept Ol Malchus Shemayim, we allow HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be the king over us. That creates a tremendous yichud in the Olam HaEmes. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted Avraham Avinu to do it on the most perfect and highest level. That could only be done in Eretz Yisrael. Hashem Melech Yisrael. So you see, HaKadosh Baruch Hu delights in the title of being the Melech of Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu cannot be the Melech Yisrael unless we allow through our actions that Hashem should be the Melech Yisrael. Now again, it's not that Hashem needs us to be the Melech Yisrael, and even if we don't do anything, Hashem is still the Melech Yisrael. Hashem is the Melech Malchi Amlucha. Hashem created everything. Hashem is everything. It's klape us to allow Hashem to be Melech Yisrael. We have to do Pa'ula, and that's only when we emulate the ways of Hashem. And ultimately, the Basayin tells us something that he himself was able to do, and we should be zoicha. This can only be done b'shleimus in Eretz Yisrael. Why is Lecha? Lecha is for you. Bechinas chaf hadimion. The word chaf is a dimion, is a comparison, right? Like it always says, Kim Mitzrayim, right? Kiz like. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling Avraham Avinu, you want to be like me? Then you have to go to Eretz Yisrael. Lech Lecha. Lecha will allow you to be the dimion. Who's the dimion? Who's the comparison? Me. And that's only when you leave your land and go to Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael, you can keep on the highest level Shabbos. There's a certain level of Kedusha in Eretz Yisrael that is, when we keep Shabbos in Eretz Yisrael, that's Shabbos b'shleimus. Umarumas b'china Shabbos, that's hinted in the word b'china Shabbos. The word areka, the Basayin explains, that has the same gematria of Shabbos, especially when the chaf soif is 500. And through that, eschel goy gadol, I will make you goy gadol, and the greater gadol you have, right, the greater Hashem will be called the Melech Yisrael. So we see from here the great toiva that we do kaviyachol for ourselves. Hashem wants to be called the Melech Yisrael. How is HaKadosh Baruch Hu called the Melech Yisrael? When we call HaKadosh Baruch Hu Melech Yisrael, right? Just like when we say Shema, we accept upon ourselves the Malchus Shemayim. We make HaKadosh Baruch Hu our Melech. And the only way to do it is by emulating the ways of Hashem. Because if we don't emulate the ways of Hashem, then Hashem has no comparison to us. Avraham Avinu was the first person in two ways to emulate and follow in the ways of Hashem. The first way was the complete removal of Gashmias, when he was Moiseh Nefesh himself for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the second way was the complete attachment to the Midah of Hashem, of Chesed. And when Avraham Avinu came to emulate Hashem in this way, he allowed himself to call HaKadosh Baruch Hu Melech Yisrael. And that's what Hashem wants, right? Hashem created the world because Hashem is Rachum. Now Hashem can't be Rachum, Kaviyachol, if there's no one to be Rachum to. Now Hashem doesn't need us to be Rachum, but Hashem is Emes. In order for the title of Rachum to be Emes, Hashem gives us Rachum. In order for the title to be Chesed, Hashem gives us Chesed. And that's what Hashem does. And the more we do that, and the more we emulate the ways of Hashem, and the best way to do it is through Shabbos. In Eretz Yisrael, we then allow Hashem to be Emes, to be called Melech Yisrael. And how is Hashem called Melech Yisrael? When there's a nation that emulates Hashem. To emulate Hashem, behold the Rachav, with Shabbos in Eretz Yisrael. Amen.